There comes a point in the avoidant person's journey, a specific, undeniable, impossible to ignore moment where everything they believed about you, everything they told themselves about why the relationship ended, everything they constructed through their defensive narratives to justify their withdrawal and their coldness and their inability to sustain what you offered, all of it collapses, not gradually, not through slow erosion of belief, but through sudden, devastating, crystal clear recognition that they were wrong. Wrong about you, wrong about what you represented, wrong about why they left, wrong about the story they told themselves that made leaving feel justified and staying feel dangerous. They misjudged you, completely, fundamentally, in ways that cost them everything they actually wanted, while they were busy protecting themselves from everything they feared. They believed you were too much, too needy, too demanding, too intense, too invested in ways that made them uncomfortable and threatened their independence and triggered their fear of being consumed by a relationship. They believed the closeness you were creating was suffocating rather than nourishing. They believed the consistency you were offering was boring rather than stabilizing. They believed the depth you were reaching for was dangerous rather than beautiful. They believed the future you were building together was trap rather than the extraordinary life two people create when they choose each other fully and sustain that choice through sustained presence and sustained effort. Every single one of these beliefs was wrong, and they know it now. They know it with the kind of clarity that only arrives after someone has spent significant time living without what they destroyed, significant time experiencing the absence of everything they pushed away, significant time comparing what they have now to what they had then, significant time confronting the devastating gap between the story they told themselves about why they left and the truth about what actually happened and what it actually cost them. The misjudgment wasn't malicious. It wasn't conscious choice to misread who you were or what you were offering. It was automatic protective response. Their system perceived threat where no threat existed, perceived danger where safety was actually being created, perceived suffocation where the most nourishing environment they'd ever been in was actually developing. The system was doing what it was designed to do: protect them from vulnerability by interpreting intimacy as danger. But the system was wrong, and now they know it was wrong, and now they're coming back, not with empty words or vague expressions of regret or ambiguous communication designed to test whether you'll pursue them again. They're coming back with something specific, something concrete, something that represents genuine shift in how they understand themselves and what they are willing to offer. They're coming back with opportunity for you to see who they're becoming, opportunity for the relationship to exist on fundamentally different terms than it existed before, opportunity for both of you to experience what was always possible between you, but was prevented by their misjudgment of who you were and what you needed, and what the relationship could actually become if they showed up differently than they showed up before. This opportunity isn't guaranteed to be right for you. It is an obligation you owe them, simply because they finally recognize their mistake. It is an automatic invitation to resume relationship that caused you pain. It's choice, informed, conscious, fully aware choice that you can make from a position of complete power and complete clarity about what you deserve and what you're willing to accept. But it's real. It's here. And understanding what it actually represents, what it actually requires, and what it actually means for where things go from here helps you make the choice that serves you best, regardless of which direction that choice takes. What, specifically, they misjudged about you and how the misjudgment shaped everything that happened. The avoidance misjudgment of you wasn't single mistake, but was collection of specific misperceptions that operated simultaneously. each one reinforcing the others, each one creating a layer of misunderstanding that made the relationship feel more threatening than it actually was. Understanding exactly what they got wrong reveals why they behaved the way they behaved, and why correcting these misjudgments has changed everything about how they see the situation now. They misjudged your emotional needs as excessive when they were actually completely normal and reasonable for the stage the relationship had reached. When you expressed desire for consistency, for regular communication, for emotional availability, they interpreted these as demands that exceeded what any reasonable person should expect, as evidence you were too needy, as signs that being with you would require a level of emotional labor they couldn't sustain. But your needs weren't excessive. They were baseline requirements for healthy relationship. Any therapist, any relationship expert, any person operating from secure attachment would confirm that what you were asking for was not only reasonable, but was the minimum standard for functional partnership. The avoidance misjudgment here wasn't about your needs being wrong. It was about their tolerance for normal relationship requirements being calibrated so low that baseline needs felt like extraordinary demands. They interpreted your normalcy as your pathology, and this misinterpretation drove them to withdraw from relationship that was actually offering them exactly what healthy relationship looks like. They misjudged your independence as less significant than it actually was, failing to recognize that you maintained complete, rich, fulfilling life alongside the relationship rather than organizing everything around them. They believed you were dependent, believed your investment in the relationship meant you had nothing else, believed your love for them meant they were your entire world, believed your emotional availability meant you couldn't function without their presence. None of this was true. You had friendships that fulfilled you. You had interests that engaged you. You had career or goals or pursuits that gave your life meaning, independent of any romantic relationship. You had identity that was complete and whole, whether they were in your life or not. But they couldn't see this because their fear created lens through which your love looked like dependency, and your investment looked like need, and your presence looked like the suffocating merger they feared intimacy would create. Now, they see clearly, see that you were never dependent, never consumed by the relationship, never the needy person their fear told them you were. And this corrected perception has fundamentally changed how they understand what was being offered to them. They misjudged your patience as weakness when it was actually one of the most sophisticated forms of strength available to another human being. Throughout the relationship, your patience, your willingness to give them time, to understand their patterns, to remain present despite their withdrawal, was interpreted by them as evidence you couldn't enforce boundaries, couldn't stand up for yourself, couldn't leave when leaving was justified. They believed your staying was about your inability rather than your choice. But patience rooted in genuine understanding isn't weakness. It's evidence of psychological sophistication, evidence of genuine care for another person, evidence of belief in someone's potential that most people couldn't sustain in the face of the behavior they were responding to with patience. The misjudgment of your strength as weakness meant they never properly respected what you were doing or understood the difficulty of sustaining the stance you were maintaining. Now they see it for what it was, extraordinary strength that deserved extraordinary recognition rather than exploitation. They misjudged your boundaries as negotiable when they were actually firm, and when your willingness to enforce them was always present beneath the patience and the understanding. They tested boundaries repeatedly, pushed against limits, ignored stated needs, created situations where your boundaries would either be enforced or abandoned. And each time they pushed, they interpreted your continued presence as evidence your boundaries weren't real, that you'd ultimately accept whatever they offered, regardless of how far below your stated needs it fell. This interpretation was wrong. Your boundaries were always real. Your willingness to walk away was always present. The reason you hadn't yet walked away wasn't because your boundaries were flexible, but because you were giving them genuine opportunity to show they could meet those boundaries. When they finally failed to meet them, when the evidence accumulated beyond what patience could reasonably accommodate, you did walk away. And the walking away proved that boundaries were always real, were always firm, and were always going to be enforced when evidence proved they wouldn't be honored. This realization that you weren't the boundary-less person they assumed you were, but were a person with very real boundaries who simply gave them more time than most people would have given, has fundamentally shifted how they understand the power dynamic between you. They misjudged your love as something that would persist indefinitely, regardless of how they treated it, believed that because you loved them deeply, that love would sustain itself through any amount of neglect or withdrawal or inconsistency. This might have been true initially. Love does have remarkable capacity to persist through difficulty, but love is an infinite resource that regenerates automatically regardless of how it's treated. Love that's repeatedly disrespected, repeatedly met with withdrawal, repeatedly given insufficient reciprocation. This love eventually reaches point where it transforms, not into hatred, not into bitterness necessarily, but into something quieter and more final. Peace. Peace with the loss. Peace with moving forward. Peace with the recognition that love was given generously and wasn't honored, and that the giver deserves to redirect that love towards someone capable of receiving it properly. They misjudged the permanence of your love, and this misjudgment is perhaps the most costly one, because it assumed they had unlimited time to figure out how to respond to it. They didn't. And now, they know they didn't. What the opportunity they're bringing back actually looks like, and what it genuinely represents. The avoidant isn't coming back with vague hope or ambiguous suggestion that things might be different now. They're coming back with specific opportunity that represents concrete evidence of the shift that has occurred inside them. Understanding what this opportunity actually consists of reveals whether it's genuine or whether it's simply more sophisticated version of previous patterns. The opportunity includes evidence of therapeutic work, not just statement that they've started therapy, but demonstration through changed behavior that the work is actually happening and actually producing results. They can articulate what they've learned about their attachment style. They can identify their patterns in real time rather than only in retrospect. They can name the specific fears that drove their withdrawal without using those fears as excuse for the withdrawal. They can demonstrate through sustained behavioral change over months that the work isn't theoretical, but is actively reshaping how they show up in relationship. This evidence isn't perfect. Growth is messy and imperfect, but it's real, and it's sustained, and it's verifiable through observation rather than through their words alone. The opportunity includes acknowledgement of specific ways they misjudged you and specific ways those misjudgments created the harm they caused. They're not offering generic, I was wrong about some things. They're offering specific, detailed, honest assessment of exactly where their perception failed, exactly how their fear created distortion, exactly what they told themselves that wasn't true, and exactly how correcting these misjudgments has changed their understanding of what existed between you and what could exist if they're willing to show up differently. This specificity is evidence of genuine reflection rather than surface-level acknowledgement designed to restore access to you without doing actual work. The opportunity includes demonstration that they've developed capacity for the things that were previously impossible for them, capacity for consistency, for emotional availability, for sustained presence, for communication that's honest rather than defensive. This demonstration isn't claim about future behavior. I'll be different this time. But is evidence of present capacity developed through sustained work. They show it through how they communicate now, through how they handle moments that previously triggered withdrawal, through how they respond to intimacy that previously created panic. The capacity exists now in ways it didn't exist before, and the opportunity is invitation to experience this new capacity rather than to trust their words about it. The opportunity includes complete transparency about where they are in their growth process, what they're still working on, what remains difficult, what triggers still exist, where they might struggle. This transparency is significant because it represents departure from the defended, self-protective communication style that characterized the previous relationship. They're not presenting perfect version of themselves. They're presenting honest version, including limitations, including ongoing challenges, including areas where they're still developing capacity. This honesty about imperfection is actually more reassuring than claims of complete transformation would be, because it demonstrates they're approaching the opportunity with authenticity rather than with performance. The opportunity includes clear communication about what they're willing to offer now versus what they were unable to offer before, specific commitments backed by demonstrated capacity rather than by hope or intention. They're not saying, "I'll try harder." They're saying, "Here is what I can now actually do. Here is how I've demonstrated it. Here is what this looks like in practice, and here is what I need from you to make this work." The shift from vague intention to concrete demonstration is the difference between someone who's recognized their mistake and someone who's actually done the work required to correct it. How to evaluate whether this opportunity actually deserves your consideration. The avoidance return with opportunity doesn't automatically deserve your acceptance or even your serious consideration. Evaluating whether this opportunity is genuine and whether it serves you requires specific assessment criteria that protect you from reopening wounds while remaining open to possibility if genuine change has occurred. Understanding how to evaluate the opportunity helps you make decision from position of clarity and self-protection rather than from position of hope or nostalgia. The first thing to evaluate is whether the change they're demonstrating is sustained or whether it's recent enough that it might be crisis-driven rather than genuinely integrated. Change that's been maintained for minimum 6 months through consistent therapeutic work and consistent behavioral demonstration is fundamentally different from change that emerged 2 weeks ago in response to fear of permanently losing you. Recent change might be genuine beginning of transformation, but it hasn't been tested enough by time and circumstance to be trusted as foundation for renewed relationship. If their change is recent, the appropriate response might be acknowledgement of their effort while maintaining your current position until the change demonstrates itself over a longer period. The second thing to evaluate is whether they're approaching the opportunity with genuine understanding of what went wrong or whether they're simply presenting corrected version of same dynamic, coming back with better strategy for getting you while maintaining fundamental patterns beneath the improved surface. Genuine change looks like they can identify their fear, they can name their patterns, they can take responsibility without excuse, they can demonstrate new behavior in moments that previously triggered old behavior. Sophisticated repetition of old pattern looks like they say right words, they present compelling narrative about their growth, but when tested by actual intimacy or actual closeness or actual moments where old patterns would be triggered, the old behavior resurfaces. Pay attention to behavior more than words. The third thing to evaluate is whether accepting this opportunity would require you to compromise the peace and the boundaries and the self-worth you've developed since the relationship ended. If saying yes means returning to state of anxious investment, means organizing your emotional life around their behavior again, means sacrificing the genuine peace you've built, then the opportunity isn't serving you, regardless of how genuine their change might be. Your healing isn't negotiable. Your peace isn't something you should trade for possibility of reconciliation. If the opportunity can coexist with your continued self-protection and your continued boundaries, it might deserve consideration. If it requires dismantling what you've built to rebuild what was broken, it doesn't. The fourth thing to evaluate is whether you actually want what they're offering or whether you're simply responding to the emotional pull of being wanted again after a period of loss. There's significant difference between genuinely wanting to rebuild relationship with this specific person and wanting the feeling of being chosen and wanted after period where you felt unchosen. The first is informed decision based on genuine desire. The second is emotional response that might lead to accepting opportunity that doesn't actually serve your long-term well-being. Sit with the distinction honestly before making any decision. What this opportunity means for you, regardless of whether you accept it or not. The avoidance return with genuine opportunity, whether you accept it or decline it, has specific meaning for you and for how you understand yourself and your future. Understanding what this moment means, independent of your decision about the opportunity, reveals its significance beyond the immediate choice. It means you were right about everything. Right about the connection being real. Right about the potential existing. Right about the relationship being worth fighting for when you were fighting for it. Right about who you were and what you offered and what was possible if they could have shown up differently. The opportunity they're bringing back is confirmation that what you saw was accurate. The relationship was extraordinary. The potential was genuine. And the only thing preventing it from being everything it could have been was their inability to sustain it. Now, they have that ability. Now the potential can be realized, whether through this specific opportunity or through future relationship with someone who has this capacity from the beginning. The potential you always saw in yourself and in love is real and is available it means you can make this decision from a position of complete power. Not the anxious, desperate power of someone who needs them to choose them, but the calm, informed, self-possessed power of someone who knows their worth, knows what they deserve, and knows they'll be extraordinary, regardless of which direction they choose. You're not deciding from fear. You're not deciding from hope. You're deciding from clarity. And clarity, genuine, earned, hard-won clarity, about who you are and what you deserve, is the most powerful position from which any decision can be made. It means that whether you say yes or no, you're demonstrating to yourself and to them and to the universe exactly who you are. If you say yes, if you evaluate the opportunity honestly and determine it genuinely serves you and you genuinely want what they're offering, you're demonstrating that you're someone who can forgive, who can remain open to growth in others, who can choose love when love is genuinely offering itself with the capacity to sustain it. If you say no, if you evaluate the opportunity and determine that your peace is more valuable than the possibility of reconciliation, or that the risk isn't worth the potential reward given your own healing journey, you're demonstrating that you're someone who honors herself, who maintains boundaries, even when the person on the other side has done the work, who understands that not every opportunity that presents itself deserves acceptance simply because it's available. Both decisions demonstrate extraordinary character. Both decisions serve you. Neither decision is wrong. It means the story between you and them isn't necessarily over, but the story is fundamentally different now than it was before. Before, the story was about you loving someone who couldn't sustain that love. Now, if you choose to continue it, the story becomes about two people who both did their work, both developed capacity, both chose to try again from position of genuine readiness rather than from position of desperate hope. This is different story. Better story. story where both people are showing up fully, rather than one person carrying the weight while the other defends against it. Whether this better story is one you want to be part of is entirely your choice. But knowing it exists, knowing that the person who misjudged you has finally seen you clearly, has done the work to become someone capable of sustaining what you offer, and is now offering you the opportunity to experience what was always possible. This knowledge is itself gift, regardless of what you do with it. It confirms that you were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never insufficient. You were simply offering something extraordinary to someone who wasn't yet ready to receive it. And now they're ready. And now the choice is yours. And whatever you choose, yes or no, forward or finished, together or apart, you're choosing from the most powerful, most informed, most self-possessed position you've ever occupied. You're choosing as someone who knows exactly who they are, someone who knows exactly what they deserve, someone who will never again accept less than what they're worth. Not from this person, not from anyone. The avoidant misjudged you. They finally see who you actually are, and now they're offering you the chance to show them, really show them, what happens when someone finally sees you correctly. What you do with that chance is entirely up to you. And whatever you decide, the person you've become through this entire journey, the healed, boundary-maintaining, self-worth knowing, genuinely peaceful person you are right now, that person is going to be extraordinary in whatever comes next, with them or without them. The opportunity is here. The choice is yours, and you are more than ready to make it. The avoidant misjudged you. They finally see who you actually are, and now they're offering you the chance to show them, really show them, what happens when someone finally sees you correctly. What you do with that chance is entirely up to you. And whatever you decide, the person you become through this entire journey, the healed, boundary-maintaining, self-worth knowing, genuinely peaceful person you are right now, that person is going to be extraordinary in whatever comes next, with them or without them. The opportunity is here. The choice is yours, and you are more than ready to make it. But here is what exists beneath the surface of this opportunity, beneath the words they carefully chose, beneath the evidence they presented, beneath the vulnerability it took them to reach out and offer you something they never thought they'd be capable of offering. Beneath all of it is something profoundly human and profoundly important. They grew, not perfectly, not completely, not in ways that guarantee everything will be different this time, but genuinely, measurably, in ways that are visible through sustained behavioral change rather than through hopeful promises about future behavior. And this growth, this difficult, painful, hard-won expansion of their capacity to be present and available and honest, represents something rare in the landscape of avoidant attachment recovery. Most avoidants never reach this point. Most avoidants cycle through relationships indefinitely, destroying each one through the same patterns, carrying the same wounds forward, without ever doing the work required to address them. The fact that this person reached the point where they could recognize their misjudgment, could acknowledge the harm they caused, could do sustained therapeutic work to develop new capacity, and could approach you with genuine opportunity backed by demonstrated change. This is extraordinary. Not because it excuses what happened before, not because it erases the pain they caused, but because it reveals something about who they're becoming that deserves to be acknowledged regardless of what you decide to do with the opportunity they're offering. The opportunity also exists within larger context of what healthy relationship recovery actually looks like. And understanding this context helps you evaluate whether what they're offering aligns with genuine recovery, or whether it represents a sophisticated version of old pattern wearing new clothes. Genuine recovery from avoidant attachment doesn't look like sudden transformation where everything is fixed and relationship can simply resume where it left off. It looks like sustained, imperfect, honest work where the person developing new capacity is transparent about both their progress and their ongoing challenges. It looks like relationship that progresses more slowly than it did before. Not because either person is holding back, but because both people are being intentional about building something sustainable rather than rushing toward intensity that previously triggered the avoidance defensive response. It looks like communication that's different in quality, more honest, more vulnerable, more willing to name fear rather than acting it out through withdrawal. If what they're offering aligns with this reality of genuine recovery, rather than with the fantasy of instant, complete transformation, the opportunity deserves serious consideration. If what they're offering sounds too perfect, too complete, too much like they've become an entirely different person overnight, this should create caution rather than excitement, because genuine growth is messy and imperfect, and anyone claiming otherwise is either performing or genuinely unaware of how attachment healing actually works. What deserves your attention most in this moment isn't whether they've changed enough, but whether you want what changed looks like. Because the opportunity they're bringing isn't just about them. It's about what kind of relationship you want to build and whether this specific person, with their specific history and their specific growth and their specific ongoing challenges, is the person you want to build it with. Some people will evaluate this opportunity and determine that yes, the connection was genuine enough, the growth is real enough, the potential is compelling enough, that exploring what's possible now deserves their energy and their investment. And for these people, moving forward carefully, maintaining boundaries, requiring continued demonstration of change, and allowing relationship to develop at pace that honors both people's needs, this is healthy response to genuine opportunity. Other people will evaluate this opportunity and determine that no, regardless of how genuine their growth might be, regardless of how real the connection was, regardless of how compelling the potential remains, the cost of what happened before was too high. The healing they've done for themselves is too precious to risk, and the life they've built in absence of this relationship is too fulfilling to disrupt for possibility that might not materialize into sustained, healthy partnership they deserve. And for these people, declining the opportunity with grace and without bitterness, acknowledging the growth they've demonstrated while maintaining the boundary that serves their own well-being, this is equally healthy response to genuine opportunity. Neither response is wrong. Neither response requires justification to the other person or to yourself. The only wrong response would be making the decision from a place of fear rather than clarity, accepting out of fear of being alone or declining out of fear of being hurt again. Fear-based decisions in either direction don't serve you. Clarity-based decisions in either direction do. What remains true, regardless of your choice, is that the avoidance misjudgment of you created specific wound that their recognition and their growth and their opportunity cannot fully heal. The wound of having been seen incorrectly, of having been dismissed when you deserve to be honored, of having been treated as problem when you are actually solution. This wound heals on your timeline, not theirs. Their growth doesn't erase it. Their opportunity doesn't automatically close it. You heal this wound through continued work on yourself, through continued recognition of your own worth, through continued building of life that demonstrates to yourself that you are extraordinary, regardless of whether this person or any person fully understands that extraordinariness. The misjudgment they made, believing you were too much, too needy, too demanding, was never about you. It was about the lens through which their wounds made them see everything. You were never too much. You were simply more than they had capacity to receive at the time. And now, they have capacity. And now the lens has been corrected. And now you get to decide whether the corrected lens and the developed capacity create situation where exploring what's possible serves your life and your heart. You get to decide. From position of complete power, complete clarity, complete knowledge of who you are and what you deserve and what you're willing to accept. There is something else that deserves examination before you make your choice. Something that exists in the space between who they were when they misjudged you and who they're presenting themselves as now. That something is the question of whether their growth has been tested by genuine difficulty or whether it has only existed in controlled conditions where the emotional stakes were manageable. Growth that's been demonstrated in therapy office is fundamentally different from growth that's been demonstrated in real relationship, where fear is triggered and old patterns threaten to resurface, and the moment arrives where choosing new behavior requires overriding everything their system has been trained to do for decades. The opportunity they're offering gives you a chance to witness which version of their growth is real, the version that exists in safe therapeutic environment, or the version that sustains when relationship becomes genuinely intimate and genuinely vulnerable and genuinely threatening to the part of them that still carries the original wounds. This distinction matters enormously because most avoidants who do therapeutic work develop genuine insight and genuine new skills in controlled settings. The true test arrives when those skills are required in the heat of actual relationship, when closeness triggers fear, when vulnerability feels dangerous, when the impulse to withdraw screams louder than the newly developed capacity to stay. If they can sustain new behavior in these moments, imperfectly but genuinely, their growth is real in ways that matter. If the new behavior collapses under pressure of actual intimacy, their growth remains theoretical, and the opportunity, however well-intentioned, doesn't yet represent what you actually need. This testing doesn't have to happen all at once, and doesn't have to create anxiety about whether they're going to fail. It happens naturally through the gradual development of relationship, through moments of closeness, followed by moments of fear, through opportunities for withdrawal, followed by choices to stay present, through the ordinary texture of two people learning to be together when one of them is actively rewiring decades of conditioned response. The testing is built into the relationship itself and doesn't require you to create obstacles or to withhold yourself strategically. It simply requires you to be present, genuinely, fully present, and to observe how they respond to that presence over time. Their response to your genuine presence is the only metric that actually matters. What the opportunity ultimately reveals, regardless of whether you accept it, regardless of whether their growth proves sustainable under genuine pressure, regardless of what happens next in this specific story between you and them, is something about the nature of love itself and about what love requires of the people who choose it. Love requires capacity, not perfection, not the absence of wounds or the elimination of fear, but capacity, the willingness, and the ability to show up despite wounds, to remain present despite fear, to choose connection when every part of your conditioning tells you connection is dangerous. The avoidant who brings you this opportunity is demonstrating capacity they previously lacked. Whether this capacity is sufficient for the relationship you deserve remains to be seen through the actual living of relationship rather than through the promising of it. You deserve someone whose capacity is demonstrated not just through words or through therapeutic progress, but through the daily, unglamorous choice to be present with you when presence is difficult. Someone who stays when staying requires courage. Someone who communicates when communication requires vulnerability. Someone who chooses you actively, consciously, with full awareness of what choosing requires every single day. Not because they're performing, but because they've developed the internal architecture to sustain what choosing you actually demands. The avoidant who misjudged you is offering to become that person. Whether they actually become that person is something only time and genuine relationship can reveal. But the offering itself, the willingness to try, the honesty about where they are, the demonstrated effort to become capable of what they previously couldn't sustain, this deserves acknowledgement, even if it doesn't deserve automatic acceptance. They saw you wrong. Now they see you right. And seeing you right has changed everything about who they understand themselves to be and what they understand themselves to be capable of. This is their journey. It's important. It matters. And it exists alongside your journey, your healing, your growth, your development of capacity to make choices from clarity rather than from fear. Both journeys matter. Both deserve respect. And the intersection of these two journeys, where their growth meets your clarity, where their new capacity meets your established boundaries, where their willingness to try meets your willingness to evaluate honestly, this intersection is where the future gets decided, not by hope, not by nostalgia, not by the ghost of what existed before or the fantasy of what might exist now, by clear-eyed, self-aware, boundary-maintaining assessment of whether what they're offering actually serves the life you're building and the love you deserve. That assessment is yours to make. No one else can make it for you. No one else should make it for you. You, the person they finally see correctly, the person who was never the problem, the person who carried extraordinary love through extraordinarily difficult circumstances and emerged on the other side, knowing exactly who she is and exactly what she deserves. You make this choice, and whatever you choose, it will be right. Because you're choosing from the only place that produces right choices, complete knowledge of yourself. The avoidant misjudged you once. They won't make that mistake again. Whether you give them the opportunity to prove it, or whether you simply carry forward into your future the absolute certainty that you were never what they believed you were. Either way, the misjudgment is corrected. Either way, the truth is known. Either way, you are seen, finally, completely, accurately, for exactly who you are. And who you are has always been extraordinary. That was never in question. It was only ever in their ability to see it. Now, they see it. And now, you get to decide what seeing it means for what comes next. The choice is yours. It always was. And here is what you should carry with you as you sit with this decision, not just about them, but about yourself and about every choice you make from this point forward. You spent an entire relationship loving someone who couldn't see you. You gave everything you had to someone whose wounds prevented them from receiving what you were offering. You maintained your dignity, your boundaries, your sense of self through the most psychologically destabilizing experience available to another human being. Loving an avoidant who couldn't love you back the way you needed to be loved. And you survived. More than survived. You thrived. You healed. You grew into someone whose clarity is unshakable and whose self-worth is unbreakable. This survival, this thriving, this growth, it happened because of who you fundamentally are, not because of anything they did or didn't do. You were built for this. Built to love deeply without losing yourself. Built to maintain boundaries without losing compassion. Built to walk away when walking away was the only healthy option available. Built to heal without requiring their participation in your healing. Built to become extraordinary through the very pain that was supposed to destroy you. And now, they're offering you something. An opportunity. A chance to see whether the person who misjudged you has become someone capable of sustaining what you offer. Whether you take that chance or whether you decline it gracefully and move forward into life that continues without them, you carry everything you've learned, everything you've become, everything you've built through this entire journey. Nothing they do with their opportunity changes who you are. Nothing they offer adds to or subtracts from the extraordinary person you've already become. The opportunity is theirs to offer. The decision is yours to make. And the life that unfolds from whatever you decide, whether it includes them or moves beautifully forward without them, will be life worthy of someone who was never, not for a single moment, the problem. You were always the answer to your own life, to your own healing, to your own happiness. And now, finally, to the question they spent months or years desperately trying to answer. Who was she really? And what did I actually lose? They know now. They see now. And whatever comes next, that seeing, that finally accurate perception of who you are, exists permanently in the world. It cannot be taken back. It cannot be unseen. You are seen. You are known. You are understood. And you are extraordinary. From this moment forward, and for every moment after. Regardless of what you choose, regardless of what they do, regardless of anything, you always were. And the person who finally gets to keep you, whether it's this person who learned the hard way, or someone new who simply knows from the very beginning, will spend every single day recognizing what they have while they have it, not after, not in retrospect, not through the painful education that arrives too late, but in real time, in the present moment, with full awareness and full gratitude and full capacity to hold what you offer because they were never too afraid to receive it. That person is the person you deserve. That person exists. And you, the person who was misjudged, the person who survived, the person who healed, the person who stands here now with complete clarity and complete power and complete knowledge of her own worth, you are going to find them, or they are going to find you. Either way, the finding is coming. And when it does, everything the avoidant misjudged will finally make sense. Not as the end of your story, but as the beginning of the one you were always meant to live.